So welcome back to the podcast. My name is Joseph Clough and this is episode 531 and this is being broadcasted live on YouTube, which is youtube.com/Joseph Clough, and also on Facebook. At present URL is facebook.com/Joseph's fan page, when they were fan pages. And today I want to really kind of get into curiosity. I want us to get into how we can use simple tricks to change our associations to the things we're going through, from life as well, the issues, literally anything. Because your mind, we've talked about this in the last few episodes, is that your perception makes your reality, right? Whatever you perceive to be true is true for you, and based on the quality of your perception, it's going to get the quality of your results. So if you have certain belief systems about yourself and the world, so it could be about you being not good enough, or the world, like the world's a bad place, or money's a bad thing, relationships or people are bad. Beliefs make up our world. And we've also said before that the decisions we've made in the past are going to cause us to have a certain perception as well. But one thing that you have to think about when it comes to whatever we perceive to be true is true for us and our reality. And many people have all these different perceptions, hence why there's a lot of conflict in the world. We all have these different so-called truths even, but it's not objective reality. It's our own reality tunnel. It's our perception of what we think is true. And if you think about that, your brain is encoding your perception based on our past, ultimately as an overall. And within our past, we've made decisions, we've created beliefs consciously, but I'd probably say 99.9% of the time that belief is always going to be unconscious, because it's hard to shift a belief sometimes. You can be given so much counter evidence, yet you can hold on to your belief really, really tightly. And I'm sure you've been in like maybe disagreements with people and you've came up with all this evidence saying, look, it can't be true because of XYZ, but that person holds on to that belief so tightly because it makes up their model of the world. And when it comes to making up their model of the world, the other thing that happens is we make associations. We associate to certain things. Now, what kind of associations are there? Literally everything is association. You may have an association to certain foods that you like and foods that you dislike. You will have an association between what a green light means and a red light. Hopefully a red light is to stop and a green light is to go, but that's our association. Everything is coded via an association. And based on the hardwiring and the depth of that association will dictate how we see the world and the results that we get. So our associations to things, and you can think of something right now, okay, let's do a little test. And I don't want us to go for anything traumatic or anything like that, but think of something that you may dislike. Just think about something that you dislike in some way. It could be a thing, it could be an act, but something specific for a moment. As you think about that thing that you dislike, which when you think about it makes you feel a certain level of dislike or resistance even, when you think about that, you're going to have an internal representation of the meaning of it, the association of it. That might be in color, it might be in black and white, it might be a movie, it may be a still, it may be in the far distance, it might be right up close to you. You might have feelings when you think about that thing that you're associating to. You may have sounds. But ultimately, in order to know something, you've got to associate to it. You've got to have meaning behind it. Now, if you go ahead and just kind of put that thing we dislike to one side, think about something that you do like. It could be a person, it could be a thing, it could be an act. Anything that you enjoy or you like, you have some positive association to. Now, when you think of that thing or person, notice how the association is different. Notice how the colors may be different, or the location, the distance, the size of your association to that thing. Maybe the feelings, maybe there are sounds. So when you consider that, you now think of two things and you have two different associations. Now, I remember clearly I was hired once to do communication in a credit company. Okay, so I was kind of hired in to do a talk on communication, because that's what my business is about. It's like clean communication, hopefully. My words get tripped up here and there, but, you know, I know a thing or two about communication, because 93% of it is unconscious, and one thing I do know about is hypnosis. So there's all the non-verbals, in other words. Only 7% is words, the rest is tonality, physiology, and all the things in between that, like the 93%. So I was hired to do this talk, and it gets out that I do hypnosis. And it gets out that I kind of let go of issues and things like that. And this person came up to me and said, I have a fear, I have a phobia to bananas. Now, this phobia wasn't something like a real phobic, but that's the words that he said. Because a phobic definition is pretty much an irrational response to something, but in a very heightened way. Now, this person, he didn't have a huge, crazy fear, but he did have an irrational response. It was like 50% there. Every time he thought of bananas, the thought of eating one would just make him feel sick. It just make him feel so horrible on the inside. And when I work with people, I always like to ask questions, because questions, like, you can ask so many good questions and it gets a lot of information. And it turned out at school, when he was about 7, 8 years old, at lunchtime, there'd always be like the food, but also a bit of fruit, and there would be a banana. Now, in this school, this was quite a long time ago, it was very, very kind of hard as a school. Because if you didn't eat that banana, what these teachers thought, I don't know what got in their mind about this, how it'd make it better, but they thought what they'll do, if you're not going to eat it, we're going to mush it up, and then you're going to eat it by a spoon. So his association, because he hated bananas, and also then having to be force-fed them in a mushy way, it created this association in his mind of fear, of worry, of anxiety, of feeling sick. And because it happened over and over again, and just so you know, fears or phobias, they can happen in a one-time event, like a big significant event, but yeah, they can be a build-up as well over time. That's why like public speaking might not be out the bat, but over a series of failures or so-called failures, they start to get this allergic reaction to public speaking. And you could say, for this person, it was like an allergic reaction, like his physiology changed, not typical allergy, but there wasn't a reaction to it. So I began to figure out and ask questions of how he stored the representation of a banana. Sounds weird, but how did he see it in his mind? What was his association to it? So we began to figure that out. We began to, and Michelle says, must have been a Catholic school. It actually was a Catholic school. It definitely was. And, you know, back in the day, like, who knows, right? But we figured out his associations, like how he stored it in his mind, his pictures that he made every time he thought of banana, because you're going to have one. If I say, even like, don't think of a blue tree, even by saying don't do it, you're going to have to think of what that is to not do it, right? So immediately things pop into our mind. And if it does have meaning to you, like it did to this person, the banana that they were fearful of or very, very allergic to in their physiological reaction of distaste and dislike, we build up that association and it has meaning. So then I began to ask him, well, what is something similar to that? What is something similar to a banana that you do enjoy? And I can't remember what it was now, but I began to figure out how he saw that experience. So I started to get his mind, and it took literally 5 minutes, and we switched them over. We changed how he saw the present banana, with all that disgust, and we moved it in the mind to the new location of the thing that he likes. Now, like I said, we did this within 5 minutes. There's 5 minutes of a few questions, but the process, 5 minutes, easy peasy, change the association. So we tested. We're in a hotel, and someone brought in a banana, and in front of everyone, he ate that banana. He didn't love it, though. I have to admit, he did not love it, because it's very new to him, because, you know, he hadn't had one in like 30, 40 years. But he ate it fine. He was like, yeah, I can eat this. This banana's fine. Like, I don't love it, but I can do it. If I need some potassium and things like that, I'm going to be able to do that. And it's freedom of choice ultimately, right? So why be defined by our past experience when we can actually have freedom of choice to have or have not? But it was all by changing that association. It astonished everyone there because they hadn't seen it before, but they saw his reactions just talking about it in the beginning. Like, you could see, you don't need to have too much awareness to see that his breathing was changing, his tone of his skin was changing when he was talking about banana, when it wasn't even there, of just disgust and dislike. But afterwards, eating it, he was fine. And it was all about changing our association. So we got to think about, well, what is your association to the problems that you experience? So let's just say you have the association of money. You want money, but when you think about it, it has got a negative charge to maybe fear or to evil, like it's the root of all evil, or it's hard to come by. Maybe you have other things in your life, even your own self-image. How do you hold your own self-image? What kind of pictures do you make in your mind? What kind of sounds do you have? What kind of feelings do you have when you think of the thing that you have a dislike for, or something which is getting in your way? When you think of that association, it makes you feel bad, or there's resistance there. Now, your mission is to understand the coding of your brain. Usually this happens beneath the surface. And like the previous live videos that we've been doing, I've been talking about being more conscious. Not just allowing things to happen by itself. Not to allow your unconscious mind to keep doing what it's always been doing. Because we don't know what we don't know, but once we shine a light to it, we start to gain some understanding. Once we understand the inner processes of the mind, of what their unconscious mind is doing, it gives us leverage. Understanding is usually the thing which happens before transformation. You get it. You go, ah, this makes sense. I call it sometimes an epiphany, when it just goes, oh my goodness, it makes sense. I know the answer. Or I've gained some form of insight. So getting that epiphany before the transformation, there's going to be understanding. You have to understand the processes of your mind, your unconscious mind. And that's why I always say, and I get this from my father, he loves this one, and it's about being curious. It's not our job to go like, oh my goodness, I gotta figure out how my brain works. Oh my goodness, my brain is broken. Your brain's not broken. It may be working in the way we dislike. But if we come from that place of have to, need to, like we're putting so much pressure, or like we feel so stuck, it makes us stuck. It makes us feel paralyzed. It makes us feel like an imposter. It makes us feel like we're depressed, worried, or anxious, or fearful, and that there's no way out. But let's change your frame of reference and go, look, let's get curious. Let's be curious of how my brain works. We were never given a manual to the brain. I wish they taught this in school. I wish I knew about this in school. It would have saved me a load of pain, and it would have given me a ton of freedom. We've got to think about that if we were to educate our children of how we think, how we believe, how it has an impact on our self-perception. And you can break it down simplistically. But ultimately that the more we understand about how our mind works, how it generates our perception, the more able we're to change it. We're getting back the control. So your job is not to go, oh my goodness, I've got to figure all this out, but no, be curious. Be curious like a child. I wonder how I think about this. I wonder how I could possibly believe this. If I believe I'm not good enough, how could I believe that? How do I hold that belief in my mind? Now we're starting to be curious, and through curiosity, we're going to start to gain insight. The more you know about how your brain works, you're leveraging it and you're getting more control over it. As I've said before, it's like, who's riding the bus? Who's the driver of the bus? Is it our unconscious or is it our conscious mind? It should be the conscious mind. Let it do the things. Like, we've got to be setting up the destination, driving to our success, and not letting our unconscious mind take control and drive us to all the places we don't want to visit for good intentions. But going back to our association, notice and be curious. How do you associate to the bigger issues in your life? When you think of that belief, how do you see it in your mind? What internal representation do you have? Another example is, maybe we're trying to get over someone. Maybe we've lost someone. Maybe they've passed away, moved away. Maybe they're an old friend that didn't end very well. What is our association to that person? And I wonder what would happen if we were to change the association. Once you change the association, you will get a different meaning. For example, with a person, say there's someone in our life that we dislike, and we want to just not dislike them. We want to be able to be at peace. But in our mind, unconsciously, we just cannot get over them. I think we've all been there before. There's maybe someone did something, or maybe there was just some unfinished business, or we just felt like we can't move on from it. Well, notice how you see them in your mind. Notice the association you have to them, the feelings attached to that picture, or the sounds. Is it big? Is it bold? Is it moving? Are you in it? Are you looking through your own eyes? There's so many different questions to build up that picture of how you associate with it. And then what if you were to think of someone that you used to know, but then you look back at them and you have just good feelings or at peace feelings? Notice how you see that person. Guarantee you it's going to be significantly different from the person you cannot get over or you have inappropriate, unwarranted emotions or attachments to. And then your job is to start to phase them over into that new perception and association. Once we change the association, we change the meaning. Once we change the meaning, we see a whole new world. So to break it down one more time, your job is to be curious. Curious as to how your mind can think what it thinks, believe what it believes, and how you hold it in your mind. Once you understand how you hold it and how you associate to it, you can start to play around with it. And that's the curiosity. Let's just say you have an issue right now, and you think about it, and it's not a very good one. It kind of gives a bit of emotional pain. Maybe when you think about it, it's like right up close, and that's all we can see is this pain in our mind, or as the certain emotion. Imagine if you just took it, real simple. You took it, and you just threw it right in front of you, or even behind you, and made it smaller and smaller and smaller, further and further away. It's so small, so dark, that it's like 100 feet away from you. So small, so stark, and notice how the feelings change. Does it change the feeling? For most people, by taking that present representation and taking it far, far away, so small and so small, so distant, it takes away the negative charge to your unconscious mind. Now, there could be other things. What if we were to think of something that you want to get more motivated with? maybe, like, here's one for me as well. Like, I used to hate, absolutely hate reading. Wasn't very good at it, but I was on a journey of self-development and I wanted to read everything. Like audiobooks, like Audible and things, well, these were tapes. Most of the time, or maybe some CDs, but mainly they were tapes when I was getting into it. When it comes to self-development ones anyway. Because the music industry progressed further along than the personal development industry. So it was kind of hard to get all those tapes. But I wanted to learn to read well. But when I thought of reading, it just felt boring. The image in my mind was just like blah. But then I thought about what I did like. Well, I liked watching movies. When I thought of movies, they had movement. They were moving in my mind. They were like sounds, and it was like kind of like cinematic. So I started to program my mind that every time I thought of books, I would have the same association to movies. Now when I thought a book, and even now, it feels like it's coming alive. That's just my association. When I initially think of it, it feels like it's coming alive and I want to learn more. And it's all from changing your association. So always ask yourself, how can I change my association? If we think of just other basic situations, you've been trained up so well through society, through experience. So for example, what are some common associations that we have? Maybe it's certain smells. You go into I remember in England specifically, you'd go to like a Tesco's or Sainsbury's or something like that, and it'll just be pumping all the bakery smells right as you get in there. Because they're conditioning you to get hungry, they're conditioning to smell that fresh bread. Like I said, red light, green light, we're conditioned that we think red is to stop, or is definitely resistance compared to a green, which is to go. If you think of your goal and you just see it like in that red, then you're going to probably be more hesitant. But if you put a green to it, you might be more likely. I mean, it's just a very quick thing that came to my mind, but it's probably going to make a difference. You're probably going to see things differently. So notice how you hold your beliefs. Notice how you hold your associations. And notice what would happen if you were to change them. So let's go ahead and play with that. Are you ready to play with this? I want you to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and change the music for a second. So I want you to go ahead and think about, then go ahead and close your eyes with us. Go ahead and close your eyes. By the way, when you're driving, keep your eyes open, right? This is not to be done with machinery or anything like that, which you know. But yeah, make sure if you're listening to this, you are doing nothing, and you've just got like 5 minutes to have a little play in the mind. So as you just close your eyes, just gently breathe in and breathe out. There's nothing to do here, but to allow our unconscious mind to feel differently. You see, throughout your life, you've been conditioned to associate with many things. Certain thoughts, certain beliefs, certain memories. All the inside world of us, but also the external world. You begin to see or associate and have meaning to it, certain feelings, certain thoughts. Now, some of those things are good and great. Others, not so much. So I don't know if you want to do this right here or right now. You can allow your conscious mind, you, to do this. It's always nice to have an input. But you can also allow your unconscious mind beneath the surface to start to make that change. So you may bring to your mind, consciously or unconsciously, something that you would like to change the association to. from something we dislike. And in this way, something more neutral. Something that we just have, it has less energy over us. So whatever you choose in your mind, think of something that you may dislike, a certain issue or representation or association. And this is something that you would like to turn down the negative thoughts or feelings to, so it ceases to take up rent in your mind. It ceases to take too much space. So as you think of that thing, I want you to imagine however you see it. You may see it very visually, very clearly, but even if it's vaguely, that's okay too. But notice the quality of that representation. How big it is in our mind. Is it color? Is it moving? Is it still? Notice the size, the quality of it. Notice the distance it is in your mind. Maybe it's just out in front of you a few feet. Maybe it's further or to the left or to the right. You see, we all make these associations when we bring our attention to them. Notice any sounds. Notice any feelings of when you think of that thing. That's it. Now go ahead and imagine if you could take that association and as if it just goes farther and farther away in the distance. It can go ever so slowly and effortlessly, or maybe profoundly quick. It just goes way over there, going farther and farther away. Notice the size becoming smaller and smaller. It's getting more vague, darker and smaller. Notice how the feelings can start to fade away. Maybe the feelings go way over there, so far away, as you give up that association that is no longer needed. Notice the sounds becoming quieter, where you listen to the sound of my voice, where the issue becomes so small. Now let's expand upon this. Imagine that you were becoming bigger and stronger, that you are becoming so tall and so big, so strong and so powerful, that when you look at that small old association, you look down upon it and you go, I've got this. I am in control. Almost as if you may even be taken onto a top of the mountain and you're looking down upon that valley where that old association used to be, and you go, I am in control. I am in control of my mind and therefore my results. I can change this perception anytime I want, for it is in my mind and I am in control. And you, the unconscious mind, can learn from this too, that you have the ability to respond differently. You may even lock that old thing in place, so small and so far away, as if you're closing a lid on it, just locking it in place. And then you can turn around and move forward to your journey, to your dreams, to your destination, with a great release and relief. You see, anytime you wish, you can change the thoughts and images and associations in your mind. For it's all yours to be had, and you are in control. And you can also thank your unconscious mind for making this change. Decide and declare that it is now my time. I'm ready to be free. I'm ready to take control. I'm ready to go all in on my success, to be curious, to be open. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes, breathing in, and then feeling so good as you exhale, becoming more and more awake, more and more alert, all the way back into the now. There we go. And then once you're done, you can give a good old stretch. You can just allow yourself to come all the way back. There we go. Good work. I don't know what happened to my camera settings right there. They all changed for me. Hey, Say, great to have you here. So we just did a nice little process of changing associations. So with that, my wonderful friends, we have to remember that our mind is coded by our experience. It is coded by what we do, what we've been through, the thoughts, the beliefs that we have, our values. And that creates an association. And if it's important to you, it'll be a big association, whether it's bad or negative or positive or great. But the thing is, you can change the association of your mind. You can do the process that we did together, but you can also be curious to start to think about things differently. Once again, your perception is your reality. It's whatever you perceive to be true. And once you change the meaning of that perception, once you decode and be curious about how your brain works, you then gain the control over it. Remember, everything we have is an association. How we associate to it. Once we change the association, we're going to start to change our results in every single way. Thank you ever so much. Great to have you here, my friend. And also, Michelle, you're more than welcome. Carrie, you said fantastic. Thank you. Well, thank you as well. So yes, that brings us pretty much to the end of this episode. Once again, this was episode 531. And as a quick little update for everyone, we are now going to be, as of this moment, we're at 83,242 downloads on the podcast. And you're more than welcome, Christy, as well. You got to go to sleep. And also, more than welcome, Beliefs Become Reality. Great to have you here, Paige, I think it was. My memory served me. You're more than welcome, Chandra. And also, you're more than welcome. Really pleased that you enjoyed that. So yeah, we're doing really well on the podcast. Up to the, say, 83,000 downloads for the month. I think we're going to get at least 140,000 downloads just on the podcast alone. And it's all about being so consistent that results are impossible to be ignored. So, with that, my wonderful friends, I will leave that with you. Many thanks and goodbye.